There was a tough guy James Bond long before Daniel Craig, and his name was Timothy Dalton. It's time to rank the 2 Timothy Dalton movies. Yes, not much for a ranking list because there's not much to rank, which is a real shame because Timothy Dalton for me is one of the best James Bonds. You know, he came into the role at a time where the role really needs to get more serious. It needs to get more down to earth, and it needed to be more like the James Bond of the books. And Timothy Dalton came in with this, you know, he brought that James Bond of the books, and he brought the quick to anger, the assassin of Bond, you know, the aggression of Bond. Like the poster says for Living Daylights, there's a new James Bond and he's living on the edge. And, you know, Q actor Desmond Llewellyn actually said that he thinks Timothy Dalton was closest to the books, and I do think Timothy Dalton. I'd probably put Timothy Dalton and Sean Connery as the closest to the books because they were both quite cold in some moments. But I think Timothy Dalton's the whole package as James Bond. I really do, and it's such a shame that he only done 2 movies. But let's talk about them, and I'm going to be ranking second Licence to Kill from 1989. This was directed by prolific James Bond director John Glenn, who also directed the other Timothy Dalton movie, Living Daylights. And John Glenn had a new actor come into the role, and in this second outing as James Bond, Timothy Dalton really does kind of just do what he wants to do with the role. This is a revenge movie. This is James Bond going rogue. In this movie, his best friend, Felix Leiter, is targeted by drug lord Frank Sanchez, who basically puts Felix Leiter through the worst wedding day of his life, murders his wife, and feeds Felix Leiter to sharks where he loses a leg. It was great to see a really realistic villain in this, Sanchez, played by Robert Davi. Just a cold, calculating, sinister, creepy, and sleazy as well, and so true to life. And it was great to see James Bond finally embrace some true to life villains. You know, this was a guy's a drug lord. These people really do exist. And James Bond was actually battling someone who viewers could actually imagine in real life. It was no longer, you know, this Goldfinger, this incredible megalomaniac who's in control of everything and wants to take over the world. This is just a cold, sadistic, evil killer who James Bond has to get even with. This movie involves scenes of torture, there's swearing, James Bond tells people to piss off, not fuck off, piss off. Very, very British, James. There's heads exploding. I mean, this really is unlike any James Bond film. And we really do get one of the strongest James Bond girls in the movie too. Kerry Lawal as Pam Bouvier is, in my opinion, one of the best Bond girls because she's strong, she's independent, and she isn't out of place in this story that kind of deviates from the Bond formula. She's tough as well. There's a scene where her and Bond wipe out a bar full of people together. So all these people saying the new James Bond has to, you know, start working with women and has to start respecting women and even be replaced by women, hasn't seen the original series. All the makers of No Time to Die haven't watched the original series because you would see that the female characters have been getting stronger all this time. And Pam Bouvier is a great example of this in Licence to Kill, and she's really, really good performance. She's really, really believable. She's on Bond's level, and it was a great relationship between the two. Now, this movie may lack the James Bond fun, and the reason I placed this behind The Living Daylights is because I actually believe Living Daylights still felt like the old Bond movies, but with a more tough guy edge. It did. This doesn't feel like the old Bond movies at all. It's probably the most true to the darkest James Bond books. And Timothy Dalton, he's not cracking jokes. He's not, you know, trying to be like the old James Bonds. This really is him saying, right, I've come into the role now. I'm moving straight forward, and we're going to see where we take this. Sadly, it was Dalton's last Bond film, but is it his best performance as Bond? I'd probably say so, acting-wise, because he seems really settled, he seems really assured, he seems really confident in where he wants to take the character. He wanted to take him down this dark, brutal route. You know, I was happy to see it go down this route. I mean, they kind of picked it up with the Daniel Craig movies. People like to talk about Daniel Craig being the tough guy Bond, the realistic Bond. I really do think, well, I know Timothy Dalton did it first. Timothy Dalton deserves to be respected for that.
You have an assignment, and I expect you to carry it out objectively and professionally.
Then you have my resignation, sir.
We're not a country club, 007. Effective immediately. Your license to kill is revoked, and I require you to hand over your weapon. Now. I need hardly remind you that you're still bound by the Official Secrets Act.
Then I guess it's a farewell to arms.
So of course, number one in this 2-film ranking list is The Living Daylights. One of the greatest James Bond movies, I really do think. The Living Daylights, I think lots of people put License to Kill as Dalton's best, and I really think Living Daylights is the best because it captures everything from the old Bond movies, but it also is clear that they want to make this more serious, so you've kind of got everything. And of course, Aha did the theme. It's one of the greatest James Bond themes. The Living Daylights, the song, is bloody amazing. This film has a wonderful opening, and we see Timothy Dalton in action. He's doing things that Roger Moore wasn't doing. He's younger, he's more full of energy, you know, he just immediately has charisma. He's immediately believable as the James Bond that we needed at this time. He's also very charming. There are moments where Dalton clearly studied the old James Bonds. There's moments between him and Moneypenny where he still charms her. There's moments with the Bond girl where he still tries to be charming. There's little jokes between him and Q, and Dalton actually does do a few one-liners in this, and that was good that they were respecting what had come before, and they still wanted people to feel like it was a James Bond movie despite it being a new focus. And I think they really hit a sweet spot. And Dalton, you know, I went going back watching this, I was surprised how many one-liners there are and how much Dalton was actually doing a tribute to some of the older Bond movies. He's also very human. James Bond has a heart in this. I really feel like his relationship with the Bond girl is one of the greatest in all the Bond movies. Mariam Diabo as Cara is one of my favourite Bond girls because she's interesting, she's got layers to her, and her and Timothy Dalton have a very interesting relationship where Bond shows his compassion. His heart kind of goes out to this girl, whereas in the actual mission he's got to fool her as he usually has to do, but then he develops feelings for her. And this is one of the Bond girls who I actually hope, you know, you never know what the fuck happened with Bond and his women. Does he literally finish the mission and just go off and go, see you later, love? Will I see you again? No? Well, if I'm bored, yeah. Like, is that what happens? Or does he have a short-lived relationship with them? Or does he just say, look, I'm on another mission, sorry. You know, does he let them down easy? I don't know. But this is one of the most Bond girls where I wish he kind of stayed with her for a bit. I like to think he did, because there was some genuine relationship going on here. And again, all these people who say that the women have never been represented properly, you need to watch the Bond series because they're only focusing on a few movies. This was a properly well done relationship which proved James Bond actually has a heart and can have feelings for his female counterparts. It's about K&B defectors, so it was very relevant to the time, and it's actually really interesting to look at the situation between Britain and Russia at this point. Again, you know, there's no charismatic villain, but the story makes up for it. It's a very interesting story. There's some great action in this. There's a brilliant, one of my favourite chase scenes of all time in James Bond, in the snow, where Bond and Cara have to ride on her cello case. Brilliant. It's always been ingrained in my mind ever since I was a kid, seeing James Bond being chased by assassins, driving down a blooming snow slope on a cello case, you know, only in James Bond, and it's great. And also Bond has the Aston Martin, full of gadgets, full of guns, you know, still stay true to the gadget proven formula of James Bond. And it was cool they did that. They held on to the things that people held dear, but they also said this is new and this Bond has some new focuses. And there are several moments in this film where Timothy Dalton has angry outbursts, and it's so true to the Bond of the books. His quick temper, and he's just so intimidating in those moments, and in some of the moments with his line delivery, Dalton just completely nails it and completely makes you feel like this guy can flip his lid and this is an assassin.
What's the matter?
Bad accident back there.
Did you hear?
Hear from Yorkie? Yes. I got the message.
There's an awesome culmination in Afghanistan where Bond is trying to land a plane but also get rid of some opium that's on the plane, as you do. And that's one of my favourite Bond climaxes. There's several scenes in this movie that are some of my favourite Bond action scenes and some of the most that have been ingrained in my mind. I absolutely love The Living Daylights, it was great to see John Glenn usher in a new actor and still hold on to what we love from Bond, still have Dalton do a few one-liners but do what was necessary at this point and make James Bond more serious, reinvent the series and, hit the sweet spot, which Roger Moore kind of wasn't doing. I love Roger Moore, but his last few films were just too campy. This was just, let's hold on to the good parts of that, but let's make this more true to the books. And a really interesting story in this, really interesting action scenes, Timothy Dalton, it was great to see him. He refreshed the series, he really did, and I think people who don't think much of Dalton because he's only done 2 movies need to go back and look at the guy who perfected the tough guy James Bond performance way before Daniel Craig. Thanks for watching everyone. What is your favourite Timothy Dalton Bond movie? Let me know in the comments down below. And of course down the line I'm going to be talking about the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies and ranking them. But please check out my other James Bond rankings. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video and I will see you guys next time.